Hey folks, this is Dave Albert with a quick take. Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. In this episode, I'm going to talk about Jira, which has finally won out, some workflow changes we've made that have really helped us, and how we've continued to try to improve our process so that we can move faster. So, if you've been listening, you'll know that I've been having the fight with myself over whether we should move to Jira or not. Trello was great in the beginning, and then as the team started to grow and we had more disparate work between the marketing team and the product team, that it became untenable to try to manage that with any sort of planning. It was easy to lay out tasks in Trello and then work on the next available task. But if you're trying to plan out some sort of roadmap, it was nearly impossible, at least for us. Now, if you've done it, I'd love to hear from you, and how you did that. But I was not able to make it happen, and no one else in the team was able to come up with a good solution. I've been having this fight with myself for well over a year and a half. And I finally gave in, and we had the opportunity to have an intern with some project management background and who's currently learning agile methodologies. And, I had a good grasp on those already myself. So I used that opportunity to go ahead and investigate if Jira would work for us using their free trial. Of course, we've got a small team, so less than 10 people. That means that it's only $10 a month, which Trello may be free, but we were paying more with Product Board, which was working for us, but the expense of something like $600 a year per person who can edit just made it really a hassle. So only one person could update descriptions, basically do anything other than make a comment. So if you wanted to change a status, add attachments, or change what sprint it was going to be in, or anything like that, either you had to pay an additional $500 or $600 a year for that person, or send it through your bottleneck. And if you're familiar at all with, current thoughts on software development, bottlenecks are your biggest issue. Well, not just software development, pretty much anything. So I went ahead and tried Jira. Well, we went ahead and tried Jira, and it really did seem to start to make things a little bit easier. It did not solve all the problems. It did help us identify a number of places where we had problems, and we instinctively knew, but we had a harder time understanding how that is, where specifically the problem was and how we could address it. No, sorry. So we made some additional changes along with going with Jira. But what I would say to myself in the past, as soon as we outgrew Trello, we should just have moved to Jira. We were trying to recreate Jira with Product Board and Trello, or Confluence and Trello, or Confluence and Product Board and Trello. We're still using Confluence to do some of our road mapping and planning out when we expect to work on specific elements because we still don't have a true understanding of how much work we can get through our system within any given time frame. And all of the work is different size, different complexity. So it's not unique, it's not uniform. It's all unique. So we don't know how much we can get through, and we don't know how many points each individual story would be, because there's too many unknowns in a lot of the work that we're doing. So there's so much investigation and prototyping beforehand, and not just a user prototype, but a prototype of the technologies to make sure we understand how one might implement certain elements. So without that predictability, we can't really solve all of our problems. But some of the techniques that we've started to work with that seem to be making a positive impact very early on have been based around the fact that because we're so busy and it feels like we're so far behind where we want to be, we continue to keep trying to move faster. And that causes us to actually, I don't know if I would necessarily say make mistakes, but it causes us to have to revisit things. So I think I've talked about this before, but you have your lead time, which is the time from when you define something that should be implemented, and the release time. That's your lead time. Then you have cycle time, which is the time from when you start working on it until you finish working on it. And then you have the touch time, the amount of time a designer works on it, the amount of time, step back, the amount of time your business person, in air quotes. So whether that's, a user has decided they need something, and you within your company or team have decided to start working on it and understanding what the value is. All of that may be done beforehand, so that may or may not be part of the lead time, but there may be some investigations in user experience and the user interface design, implementations of each of the different people. So say, for instance, we need API work, we need data work, and we need iOS development and Android development. So if a person working within the iOS team realizes that something is not yet the way it needs to be in the API, then there's a back and forth between those two people that has actually caused a slowdown, because now your iOS developer has to stop. And then if he or she switches tasks, there's always the cost of task switching and context switching. The person who's working on the API has to go back and make changes. So every time you have those back and forths and rework required, that actually extends your cycle time. The actual touch time gets extended a little bit, but the cycle time gets extended a lot more, which of course extends your lead time. So a couple ways that we've found, which seem super obvious after you've implemented them and started to see the effects, but when you're running as fast as you can, sometimes it's hard to see what's right in front of you. Before we begin, before we begin, really implementing, even to the user experience side of things, we start with more developed wireframes and then have a discussion around it with all the people involved. If there's going to be data involved, we have them. We have obviously the user experience, user interface, the business owner, product owner, which in our case is our CEO, the API developer, operations, which those are both usually me or sometimes our data engineer, our iOS developer, and then we thoroughly interrogate those wireframes. We already found one story we were about to begin implementing that if we hadn't had that meeting, we would have had rework because it wasn't obvious from the initial outset of a specific feature set that needed to be included. Otherwise, it wouldn't be as useful a feature. So that saved us rework, which potentially it could have just been rework of the user interface, but that could have caused significant knock-on effects to that it could have caused significant rework of the actual user interface. But I don't think this particular one would. It was just an additional feature, but that additional feature wouldn't have been implemented, and it likely wouldn't have been caught until testing just before release. And that was just that initial meeting. Then we're also using a developer kickoff meeting. And by meeting, these are just Zoom sessions of 10, 15 minutes, which actually end up saving us hours. So it's been really useful. So in the developer kickoff meeting, we take those final designs that have already been fully approved after interrogation and talk through each of the elements. Make sure that we understand all the API endpoints that need to be completed, understand all the data work that needs to be completed, and understand all the iOS development that needs to be completed. And Android, although our Android team is still freelance and hasn't been integrated within our full team yet, and they're trying to catch up to where we are in iOS. So it's not as big an issue yet, but hopefully soon they'll be more thoroughly integrated and we can then move everyone forward with the same understanding. So with this developer kickoff meeting, we actually already found similar things that were not considered before the discussion, both on what needed to be implemented in the iOS app and things that need to be in the iOS app and in the API. So that definitely saved hours of work, hours of cycle time, because, as I said before, the back and forth was something that we were able to avoid. We were able to make these time savings just by simply having these two short meetings before the initial design and before development kicked off. So, yeah, I'm finding a lot of value in that, and we're already identifying waste that we can remove. Jira has been a good thing so far. We thought product board made sense in the way we had organized it, and it had. It just was inconvenient manage the actual tasks without having full users for everyone in the team. And that was just too expensive. So, yeah, if you're feeling like you've outgrown Trello, seriously consider Jira. It's funny how many Atlassian products we use. Confluence, Jira, well, Trello is now Atlassian, and Bitbucket. And the Bitbucket pipelines. So that's that's how we make our automated deployment pipeline work, which there's an episode on that, which if you're interested, you should definitely listen to. And, I'm definitely not an Atlassian fanboy. It's funny. It's almost like I use their products in spite of them. No, I'm not knocking the people that work there, but there have been a lot of issues with Jira and Confluence in the past that gave me some bad impressions, but their current cloud versions are pretty good. And I think the biggest problem is that they're solving really, really hard problems. And there are no great solutions for really, really, really hard problems. So, yeah, there's no awesome solution. But right now, Confluence and Jira and Bitbucket are really good solutions for what currently exists. I'd love something even better. And I'm sure that's what everyone there is trying to do, is to continue to improve it, to make it what we all want it to be. But then again, everybody has a different opinion of what would be right. So I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me at podcast@dave-albert.com or on Twitter @Dave_Albert. This episode was planned to be a longer episode, but I got through that much quicker. So I guess this is a quick take. It's a little bit long for a quick take, but it's a little bit short for a long take. Full episode, I suppose. So thanks for listening.
Until next time, remember, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.